Now you guys know this matte versus glossy conversation has been going on for a while, so what I have here is the Samsung S95D to the left, the Samsung S95F to the right. We're going to be showing you guys the differences between the two, and we're just going to dive right in, so smack a like on this video for this real-world, real-time content. Okay, so for starters, the One Connect box is exactly the same. That's the S95D One Connect box. We're going to look at the S95F One Connect box, and they are literally exactly the same. Now, one nice thing about the coating between the two, the S95D has this like, I don't know, what do you say, like this kind of like purplish kind of tint, right? A little bit more dispersed, I would say. And then you get over to the 95F, and it's not as dispersed, so it definitely handles the reflections better, but that is probably the biggest difference between the two and why we're having so many issues. So you guys see what it's doing. Back up, and again, you can see it like this, right? I'm gonna go ahead and kill the light in the room, so you see it with an overhead light. Now you're gonna see it with total direct light. Total direct light. Total direct light. There's no doubt the S95F is just better at diffusing those reflections than what we have on the S95D. It's just a fact. Okay, to the left we have the Samsung S95F, or rather the S95D, and then to the right we have the S95F. Now, at first this probably isn't going to make much sense, but I promise you it will once I get going with what I'm doing. I'm in filmmaker mode right now. The relevancy of this, go down to the bottom, very, very bottom. Hit reset, we're in the default, okay? Now we're gonna go to the S90F, we're gonna go to picture, we're gonna go to filmmaker mode, we're gonna go all the way down to the bottom too, and then guess what we're gonna do? You guessed it, we're gonna hit reset, fantastic. So now that we've had that done, the reason for doing that is to show you what the picture quality looks like in default filmmaker mode. Now, to show you this and to illustrate this, right about now, I'm going to fire on my nice, beautiful Sony camera, okay? Ta-da! All right, so now that that is on, we're gonna frame it, okay? And then I'm gonna start the video right about now, okay? So now we're filming on both, okay? And the one thing that you're gonna notice on both these displays is a vastly different picture quality. Now, not everybody's gonna highlight this, but I think this is the only correct way to do it. You're gonna notice that cameras from a cell phone will push color to unrealistic levels. It will make it essentially look like a TV that it is not. And you will notice this when you watch other YouTubers, and a guy like me comes out and says something to the effect of, filmmaker mode is very washed out and very ugly. It has no real color. It is a joke of a mode, and it needs to leave. Turn it off. Don't waste your time with it. Then some rascal with his cell phone will get up there, or in a really oversaturated camera profile, will get up there and say, what is he talking about? Look at how beautiful all these colors are. Look at how amazing all these colors are. What is Quantum talking about? Why would he lie? Why would he say that I don't have these vibrant, gorgeous reds? Why would he say that it looks like shit? I don't know what's wrong with the man. He's got issues. I guess he's just hating to hate. What's the problem? Especially on an image like this. I'll let this sit for a second, okay? That's fun, right? Or let's say like an image like this. This is a very fun image, right? Why would Quantum lie about it being washed out? There's nothing washed out about any of this yellow. What is he saying? This is the difference in cameras I always try to tell you guys, okay? There is a legitimate marketing campaign that goes on through YouTubers to collect favor in the forms of free review units, to collect favor in the form of press conferences and their invites, and just the general adulation you get when you never say a negative thing ever, okay? I wanted to show you this because this is filmmaker mode in default. And you saw me reset it in the beginning of this video. This is default filmmaker mode, okay? Default filmmaker mode. We're gonna go all the way down to the bottom, and we're gonna go ahead and we're gonna hit reset, okay? Now, the relevancy of this is I'm explaining how camera science works, okay? Because you need to know this. If you were to look at this image on a cell phone, it's going to look saturated, it's going to look correct, or whatever people say, right? It's going to be vibrant, yada, yada. You look at it through a real camera that'll see things closer to how you'll see it, and you'll see the truth. Now, watch what happens when you see the change, the day and night from my settings or from filmmaker mode to my settings on a cell phone, okay? Look at what happens. You ready? Get ready for this. Oh my gosh, everybody's red. It's Red Lobster. Oh my gosh, what happened? The image is so ruined. Obviously, the image to the right is more accurate. How could Quantum ever even recommend this to people? What is he doing? She's red. All of her skin is red. Oh, that just looks so much better. What's going on? Look at Quantum. He's playing games with people. You see what I mean? This is the nature of essentially what you're dealing with. People will go on YouTube and they be full of shit. They can take focus off, recompose it, and make it look nice. They can make it look like shit. They can do whatever they want to do to push whatever narrative they want to push. But you can clearly see how different these images look, right? And a dead giveaway is when you see these really bright highlights in anyone's video that they're using an automatic ISO or a cell phone. And that is a recipe for a really inaccurate representation of what the TVs look like, right? But the point being is that they will show you images like this and be like, look at Red Lobster. Look at Red Lobster right now on Quantum TV settings. Look it. He made everybody red. Look at her arms. They're all red. He has no idea what he's doing. And he's selling these settings for $5. This guy's a fucking quack. How could you ever take him seriously? And look at filmmaker mode. You have all the detail and all the beautiful color in the world. And yes, if you are looking at a cell phone, that is exactly what you're going to see. But as you see with the, again, proper footage right down here, hello, you can see what it actually looks like. It's amazing the level of deception people will go through. And don't get me wrong, we're going to go to other examples because I think this really does need to be showcased because nobody is going to defend my namesake harder than me, right? Look at that. This is a perfect case and example. I tell you filmmaker mode is washed out and it turn off all the time. People don't understand what I'm talking about. I sound like an alien to them. Well, that's all red, Quantum. Are those your settings? Yes, they are. Well, that's filmmaker mode. That looks better. Obviously, that's the more accurate mode. That is incorrect, my son. That ain't how you do it. Look at what we're dealing with. Picture quality-wise. These massive differences, okay? And a camera to a mirrorless. And you will clearly start to see what I'm talking about. Clearly, okay? And then now let's go back into the filmmaker mode. Everybody's telling you it's so fucking amazing. You gotta have it. You need this in your life, okay? Okay? There you go. There you go. And you look at it on camera and you'll be like, oh, but filmmaker mode still looks good. I don't know what he's talking about. Does it? Does it look good? They'd be like, it's obviously more saturated, more colorful, and more lifelike than what you're showing. I have filmmaker mode, and my TV doesn't look like that. Right? They claim that their TV doesn't look like this. It don't look like that. They lie and say it looks like this, all vibrant and rich. You gotta love the lies. You gotta love the lies. But the thing about lies is I can prove in real time that it is jaundiced and washed out like that. It does look like that. That is camera boosting. That is camera saturation. That is camera, again, science. Really trying to improve color because a lot of times we just take cell phone videos and it wants to saturate it and make it look all amazing by adding what it calls color correction. So you're never going to see the real image when you have dishonest YouTubers that will literally get a cell phone or an automatic ISO, right? Let's do automatic ISO and just lower it down, right? And be like, oh man, filmmaker mode looks amazing. And again, you can always tell, okay? You can always tell because there's always something off about the image. There's these weird fluctuations in brightness, right? It gets weird when you watch the comparisons. But it always has this same kind of like chilly blue look. It's like a pinkish blue. And you can always tell that they're using some sort of dishonest saturation trick because of that. In case you didn't know how to do that. I legitimately spent the first 8 minutes of this comparison showing you the lies. I mean the lies. People are going to try to tell you, look at this. They will use this. Alright, brighten it up and be like, look it, Quantum's lying. And let's try to lower it down a little bit to make it look a little bit better, right? Let's try to do it some justice, right? Okay. Let's try to adjust this on my cell phone as best as I can. Like right about there, right? What is Quantum talking about? I have it in real time on my camera and look at it. It looks amazing. Here's filmmaker mode, default. Meanwhile, it looks like that, guys. The whole fucking time it looks like that. The whole fucking time. And they'll literally sit up here and bullshit and gaslight and make you buy a fucked up TV just because they get money or favor. I don't get money or favor. I am crowd and self-funded. What that means is through my settings service, I make money on the channel. And through the channel itself, through monetization, I make money. And that money is used for, guess what? The community and the channel. And guess what? That's how we stay independent of outside influence. Just hit reset on filmmaker mode and it still looks the same. So you can clearly see that there's an issue. And again, it's an integrity issue, and I try to fight these things just so we know what we're dealing with, okay? So now that we've spent the first damn near 10 minutes showing you the difference between colors in filmmaker mode and colors on an actual camera and just how washed it's actually going to look versus, again, how vibrant and beautiful filmmaker mode default will look on a cell phone, this is a part of the video where I'll tell you, if you don't believe me, go to any old TV that you have in your home and go record it and watch how vibrant and how beautiful the blues and all the colors start bursting at the seams. Just go ahead and try that. And then you'll understand why I come down so hard on people like Stop the FOMO and Brian's Tech Therapy, quite specifically because this is dishonest. It is dishonest not to tell people how jaundiced, washed, and ugly reference accuracy is. But if you're a salesman, I get it. I'm not in the business of sales. I'm not here to sell you one TV or another. But I am here to educate and tell you the truth for your best interest, your family's best interest. Because again, you look at cell phone footage, it'll be vibrant. You look at the real footage, it'll be washed and ugly, and they tell two very different stories. And I think when you see them telling two different stories, you'll understand why I say the things I say about the YouTubers I say the things about. Okay, that housekeeping out of the way for 10 minutes, if you could believe, to explain something we all should know by now. Now we're going to get to the actual comparison. So, cell phone goes off, and now we begin by telling you to the left, we have the Samsung S95D. To the right, we have the Samsung S95F. And today we are here to ascertain a winner of this comparison. Now, if you are to look at filmmaker mode, there are improvements in filmmaker mode by default. Those improvements are going to be to color, just simply put. It's not as ugly, washed out, and jaundiced as it was, again, on the S90D. So the S95F, believe it or not, does actually have good picture quality comparatively to what they did last year out of the box. And if you want to talk about improvements, they have made an improvement to the default calibration that they do provide, giving more vibrancy and more color, so it's less washed out than it was before. And it's very, very significant, I would say, as far as skin tone specifically. Again, neither looks fantastic though, and the more image quality that you get on the screen, the more you test both of these, the more you'll see they both look like shit. They both are jaundiced and washed out, and we're going to prove that now. Okay, so you see what the S95D is doing to the right. It looks like total horseshit. I would never want that picture, but this is what I actually watch my S90D like, okay? Or S95D like, okay? And then we're going to go to filmmaker mode here, and we're going to do the same thing, not filmmaker mode. We're going to go to the S95F and do the same thing, okay? And this is how I watch my S95F. So now we're getting closer to home. Now we're going to start seeing a lot more realistic differences between these two displays. Now it's going to be very hard to do this because, again, cameras aren't going to show you every little thing. But the more saturated the image, usually the better color throw is happening. So just try to keep that in mind. Color is not a one-to-one thing. Now, again, with more housekeeping out of the way, a lot of housekeeping in this video, we're going to show you guys some differences now. Okay, and those differences are simple. The S95D to the left does a vastly better job of showing you contrast. And I mean vastly better. There's a lot more contrast and clarity happening here. Buildings will show you this immediately. Immediately, you'll see this, okay? You can see all of the contrast and clarity, and you look over there and it's washed. You have none of the details on the windows. This is called a draw distance for those who don't play video games. Draw distances look better, meaning the detail I could see on the horizon, okay? You got to think of it in these terms. this is going to produce more contrast by a lot than what this is producing. The importance of knowing this is immense, because what this suggests is even though you're paying more money, you took a hit on your contrast. So the things for you to watch when you assess contrast are things like these shadows. Shadows are going to tell on anything faster than anything, because shadows cannot be faked. Another thing, stonework, like all the details, the porous nature of stones. You start looking at those kinds of things and you can see more details than you can over here. Yes, the image to the right is brighter. There is no refuting that if you try, you're silly. Okay, there's no refuting that. It is totally the brighter image on the S95F, for sure. But brighter is not better. And I've been saying that for a number of years, guys. Again, you're going to see this again and again and again, and you're going to be like, okay, we get it. Now, not every example is going to be like this, though. Like in this example, the S95F has better contrast than the S95D, where it's now a bit more washed by comparison, right? So again, there are examples where there are some improvements here along the lines where you can see contrast that is better, okay? But it's not consistent. Because now here we are back to, again, a significant level of contrast over the S95F. And again, the S95D now being the brighter TV to the left. You're starting to see a problem here. The S95D has these moments where they're capable of holding detail and brightness. The S95F cannot do that. It can't. Now again, as I look at this image, I'm a bit, I would say, crossed. Because I do like the skin tone on the S95F on this example. I think it's beautiful. But then I look at the hair, and the hair is just too soft. And then I look at the contrast in the eyes and the lips and all the pores and everything, and it's just too soft. So it has good color, but that's kind of it when you look comparatively to last year's S95D. You have contrast, clarity, brightness. It looks closer to a glossy type of television with the kind of contrast that it renders. And the S95F is not doing that. You look at landscapes. And I mean, the kind of same story is going to keep holding through again and again and again. With again, there are some differences as far as skin tones, color temperatures, things of that nature. This year, the S95F is very blue. I've mentioned it's an undefeatable blue. What does this mean? Well, that means when you're on a pasture, and you're looking at a cemetery, like in this scene, you won't see the sun coming down and hitting the grass. And when, again, a tungsten yellow light hits grass, what happens to green when it's hit with yellow? It turns this shade of green, like a yellowish kind of green. It hits a certain hue. And this is where color volume comes into play. And we start talking about that. This is always just a very bluish green because it is not being hit with that environmental lighting. We know this and can fact check this when we look again. Remember what I said about stonework. We look at stonework first. If there's any stonework or rock in your content, look at that first. Look for that first. Well, what do we notice? We notice that the rocks are not blue. They're warm, like they would be if the sun was hitting the side of a church. We look over here and it's blue, right? And this is how you can start to pick this stuff out even on your own. No matter what a YouTuber says, you know what to look for to distinguish truth from bullshit. And I can tell you, looking at the images side by side, both have a good picture. I don't think anybody would look at this and be like, oh, they're shit, I don't like it. Both have a good picture. However, there's a better level you'll go to. There's good and then there's great, right? And you're seeing great. Greatness is on the Samsung S95D. I have to say that. Now, don't get me wrong, the picture on the S95F is good. But then again, remember what I told you about rocks a second ago. If we look at all the contrast that happens in the rocks, the S95F, S95F, it just can't do that. It's incapable. Absolutely incapable. What it can do, though, that I do notice is it does a little bit better in some examples. Like, again, when you have more greens or whatever, like I like the brown to green separation here. I think it's very good. And I think the depth is also really good in this example on the S95F. It's doing a great job. And I would actually say it's doing slightly better than what I have on the S95D. So in this instance, they are trading back and forth, okay? Well, beautiful, wonderful. Isn't that all we would ever want? Well, not really, because the S95D now is brighter. You see what I mean? It goes back and forth and back and forth, and that gets irritating. And the reason it gets irritating is when you buy a brand new TV, you want to see definitive victories. You want to see slam dunks, okay? You don't want any of this back and forth because it starts to feel like bullshit. Because you paid more money and you look at both images side by side and they have a very similar look, but you could clearly see there's more contrast to the left when you look at the mountain over here, right? And you look at draw distances and stuff and you're noticing the brighter highlight over here, right? Now, don't get me wrong, okay? I don't want you to misread this now. You could totally pump up the brightness on the S95F. But remember what I told you when I did my other comparisons. If you do that, it is not a benefit. So we'll raise up the brightness to like 50, okay? And we'll just pump up our brightness for the sake of pumping it up, okay? I want you to pay attention to what happens to skin tones and people and everything. Look at your environment now. This is the max brightness that most people are coveting and they're going to want to go for, right? Most people are going to want to look at the image and it's going to look like shit. It's over brightened, bad. Like very badly. It's very obvious that it has a massive over brightening issue. It's very clear to me anyway. All right, I'll lower down my ISO because I think that might be a little too bright. I don't know. This is my attempt to try to get it as close to what I see on my end, okay? But as I look at it, it's clear. It's very clear what's going on here, okay? Let's go to another example, okay? And the relevancy and reason for doing this is because I know, like you know, we all watch a vast amount of content that is varied. And in some situations, it's going to look beautiful. It's going to look bright. Like I think the image to the right now is beautiful. It is, but we're in a dark scene. So when you're in a dark scene and you have a lot of bright highlights, it's going to look amazing. Like a fireworks scene or like this car scene right here. That's going to look great, right? Fireworks look great on both, right? They do. I have more contrast and clarity on the S95D, and that kind of is looking more realistic. But the brightness on the S95F is just miraculous. Wow. And you're going to look at it, and you're going to think that it's, especially if you only see these kind of demo content pieces, fireworks, and stuff that keeps to a fairly low light or lowly lit scene, you're going to really think the S95F is better. You're going to be like, wow, that's amazing in every way. I want that TV. That's the best TV I've ever seen. I've got to have that brightness. Oh my gosh, amazing. And then you get to scenes like this, where we come back to reality, where we need balance. And this is where the S95D excels. You can clearly see all the exposure that is beautiful and glorious. And then over here, you don't have any of that. It's just overly brightened. Now, let's see if we can fix that with the brightness settings that I did, okay? Because I can guarantee you the TV ain't as bad as it ships. You see my point? You can absolutely max out your brightness, but there is literally no point in using any of it because it's all unusable. So basically, yeah, sure, on paper, it can hit whatever nit range it wants, but how much of that is usable depends on how much detail is preserved without this wonderful word called clipping, okay? If TVs and TV manufacturers would listen to yours truly and implement something I would call clipping control in every TV, which means no matter what, it can never clip details. It will never clip metadata detail ever. It will never blow out or crush information ever. Everybody would be happy with their TVs, period. Even if it's not the brightest thing, it will never clip and it'll never crush. Beautiful. That's what you would need. But you see, it doesn't happen like that. So we have all these inconsistencies. I can tell you they do look very identical, very similar, minus the color temperature thing, minus the contrast thing. Again, the grass on the S95D is more accurate, more realistic, more true to life than what we have on the S95F. Again, the same can hold true for vegetation. And again, this is post-calibration. And just to see where I had to start from when I made my settings, I had to start from here, okay? They didn't give me a whole lot to work with. I'll be very real with you. It didn't have much potential at all, okay? And I had to try to get it from this washed out bullshit that does not look good. And then I had to try my hardest to get it to a point where we got it somewhat decent now, right? And you're starting to see where the challenges come in, because now when you look at a scene and what it's supposed to look like, you're supposed to have all that contrast and all that detail when you have a bundle of fruit. That is more three-dimensional. That is more true to life. That is flat. you're seeing it's not a three-dimensional object. It is missing color. It is missing shadow detail that this is not missing. And when you miss color and you miss shadow detail and you miss all this stuff, that's where you lose the immersive part of things. So yeah, low-lit scenes will look great, but the reason, which I'm going to call it right now, the winner of this comparison would be the S95D, is because it renders real-world, true-to-life three-dimensionality in a way that feels immersive, and that is everything in content. That's why we buy higher-end TVs, because when you look at water, for example, you want to see every gradation in the water, every depth, everything. You will not get that on this TV. You won't. You just won't. And again, I think I've done my best at giving it the best I could give it, because if we look at where we started from, we started right about here, okay? This is where we started from, guys. That is horrible. And that's what I have to go in and fix every single time I get these TVs in for review. By, of course, purchasing them with out-of-pocket expense, my own money, right? Nobody sent me anything. And that's why I show you things the other guys just will not show you. They can't afford to show you this. They show you this, their business model is ruined, right? Because this is reality. You have to put a lot of work into these TVs. And when you do, there's still a such thing like there's just a level of contrast you cannot get out of the S95F. You can't do it. Yeah, you could get more brightness on occasion, but again, now in this scene, this is the brighter TV. And it goes back and forth and back and forth, and you find yourself with more rich contrast on the S95D, and then you realize that it's been on the market for a while and has less, and is less money. Everything is going to come to life more on the D series from last year, whether it's the S90D or the S95D. That's the truth. Because look at this pyramid. Look at how your shadows are rendering. Those look real to life, and then that's flat. It's everything about the new TVs this year, especially from Samsung, is flatness. It wants everything flat. Everything not exciting. And it's like, you ever seen like the Very Odd Parents for my 90s babies, okay? Like, freaking corporate world, look that up. Everything's gray and everything's monotone. Well, that's kind of what the S95F does 90% of the time. Now, in this example, they're getting it very right. The contrast exceeds, I'd say, or is on par. That's on par, it doesn't exceed. On par with what we have on the S95D to the left. But the S95D does, again, and this is how you say it doesn't exceed when you pay attention to it again. Remember, if you think something's winning, go to those shadows. That'll tell you everything. I go to the shadows immediately, and what do I see? Bam! Look at that. Shadow detail that just isn't giving you. And again, you can see three-dimensionality, color, depth, and it all just comes through with better brightness. The S95D is doing way better. And then you go through these examples one after the other, and then you start to see a full picture here. Like, no matter who you are, what walk of life you're from, you can't deny these contrast differences you're seeing between the D to the F. This isn't just a year's time. They aren't getting better, these TVs. They're downgrading certain aspects of them, and contrast seems to be the one thing Samsung is moving away from, as you can clearly see with this building example. Buildings also, by the way, are a great way to test contrast. Why? Because there's so much geometry. You have a whole lot of squares, and a whole lot of dark squares and light squares and different shapes that need to be correct, and if they're not correct, they're going to look flat. It's not rocket science. Now, again, there are people that like flat imagery, and for them, hey, God bless you, do your thing. I'm not one of them. I like rich, vibrant imagery, and the Samsung S95D is giving that in spades. It just is. The S95F still has beautiful color, though, as you can clearly see in this example. Gorgeous color, it does. But it's just a hair behind, if you can clearly see that. And by a hair, I'm being nice. That's an exaggeration when I say a hair. This is clearly significant. There's clearly a significant amount of color happening here that's not happening over there. To the point where it almost looks like, I'm not even joking, like I'm rocking the default settings and I did no calibration work to it. But if we remember, let's show you where I started from. You want to see what this TV actually looks like before my settings? This is what I had to work with. That's what it looked like. You miss so much color that way. Like, what the hell was I supposed to do with that? Right? And somehow, by the grace of God, I managed to turn that trash into this. So there's a significant improvement, but the improvements that the S95F can make aren't as drastic as the S95D, which means all of your scenes aren't going to be as impactful as the S95D. The S95D is going to excel and keep excelling and keep excelling, and it's going to get to the point where you're going to be like, what the fuck, why? Why? I don't understand why I would ever buy a TV that consistently doesn't give me the same level of quality that I get on the step-up model. from last year. The S95D, the flagship of last year. Honest to goodness, guys, just buy last year's model. You'd probably be happier. Anyway, right? So let's show you some moving content and wrap up with some final thoughts. Okay, so now we've entered the HDR part as we wrap up with our final thoughts, because I know people were going to be like, what the fuck? What about HDR? Okay, so clearly, to the left, HDR for the Samsung S95D. To the right, HDR for the Samsung S95F, all right? And we're using that Jennifer Galaga, I don't fucking know, that thing, okay? So you can clearly see there's a significant improvement as far as brightness goes. Pause. I mean, that's significant all day, every day. You can't deny that. There is a massive amount of, not only, I would say, color throw, but detail. There's a lot of detail. Now, if you want the more natural picture, the picture that looks more realistic, that doesn't look like a cartoon, let's just call it what it is because of the extra brightness, giving it that like cartoonish glow, then yes, you have to go over to the Samsung S95D, or you have to substantially lower your brightness on your Samsung S95F. There are no two ways about this. There's just, I'm not gonna lie, a natural element though that just draws you into the S95D. I have to be real about that. It's very aesthetically pleasing. However, that brightness on the S95F though, that's just lovely. Pause. If we look though at contrast, the same thing that we've been dealing with is the case. The S95D holds significant amounts of contrast over the S95F. And I mean significant. You can't even call it anything but significant, as you see in this example. You see, just pause, more detail. It's very apparent that this is flatter than that, right? We're gonna move on. We're not gonna harp too much, but again, pause. Now, again, when I talk about natural image quality, I mean like if a person was in front of you right now, would they be glowing like they're like, you know, radiant or a child that came down from sunlight or something, or they came down from the heavens? No, they wouldn't be glowing like that. That's a little ridiculous, right? People don't glow like that. But people do have a natural skin tone like that. And that's why I appreciate the S95D way more. It just gives me that beautiful contrast without being overzealous and just flat out unrealistic. It just does a better job of providing me an image that makes sense. Now, there's no doubt that there are brighter colors happening on the S95F. Clearly, they're brighter, but they're not more detailed, and the contrast is not better. And ultimately, that's where I kind of split when we talk about this comparison. Pause, because there are just some differences. Now, one thing that I personally think, this is kind of close to a tie for this example because they are still giving you proper melanin and all that stuff. And if you go in and you lower your brightness and you're willing to do that, you can get better contrast. And that's why I tell you, never max out your brightness on the S95F. Okay, we've had that conversation, but it's not maxed out. It's at contrast 46, which means you have to lower it down to about, I'd say, 39 before you start actually seeing anything worth your time, right? Right. And now we've got a freaking commercial coming on. We're going to go ahead and just skip that, okay? And we're going to do what we do. Hopefully it'll start back where we were. It just restarted the whole damn thing all over again. Lovely. Okay, so we're going to just go back to where we were in the video, which was right here. Okay. And you're going to see what I mean. Like, you have to lower your contrast a lot. You have to do a lot of tricks, a lot of techniques. Pause. But I can tell you that in examples like this, the color is better on the S95F. So there are moments, again, like now, I think that looks way better, more detail, and you are getting the extra contrast out of that. You just have a lot more work, essentially, on the S95F. There aren't really too many ways about that. You know what I mean? We look at this cloud example, though, pause. You look at those shadows for the turtles and everything, you start to see some clear differences, you do. There's just more contrast on the S95D. Pause. I love this example, by the way. In my last video that I did this, people were like, you're not supposed to see light leaking through the clouds. It's all pissy. And just to show you guys like where the S95F started, because since the D is the older TV, that's the only reason I'm not doing it. The F is the new one everybody's looking to buy. So we're going to go down here, and this is where it started from, okay? What? Literally, what the fuck? Why would you want that? Like, nobody would want that, okay? That's where it started from, and this is what we took it to. So we have the light rays in the sky and all that good stuff. And yeah, it's on par with the S95D in some ways. But again, if you really pay attention, deeper color depth and clouds have better contrast and clarity on the turtle. I mean, you see those differences, right? And this is where I kind of get to the point where I'm like, dude, like, it doesn't really matter what most people say. I mean, the more natural images to the right, the more vibrant images, or the more natural images to the left, more vibrant images to the right. Pause right here. Contrast in those clouds on the S95D beyond what we have on the F. The F it's got a flatness problem. Even in HDR, even in any mode you can pick out, it's just constantly, consistently, reliably meh is the word I would use. It doesn't strive to reinvent the wheel in a way I personally believe that it should. The yellows are better on the S95F right now in this example, okay? It just, I don't know. It doesn't do it for me like it should for being a newer TV that costs significantly more money. Again, I don't think anybody is going to be lost by the message here or the brightness here. I mean, you could clearly see the brightness advantages on the S95F, but the S95D has contrast in spades. And this is what the conversation again and again, doesn't matter how many examples I can throw up on the screen or throw at you, is going to come down to, do you prefer brightness or do you prefer contrast? The brightness is exciting. The brightness makes you go, oh, wow, that's really cool. I haven't seen that before. But I mean, the contrast also is nice to have. It's not that the S95F doesn't have contrast, it just doesn't have it as good as the S95D, along with color, pause, because now the color is just way off on the S95F. It's like way too warm, even though it's calibrated, and it does weird shit. And so you have to go back and optimize and back and forth and back and forth, and trying so hard to get the F to look like the S95D is really difficult and annoying, frankly, and it's not something that you should have to do. But that's very much the situation that you're in. Again, in this example, both look good. I think when we talk about HDR, I don't think you'll find a loser between these TVs. I would say, obviously, the winner for brightness is going to be the S95F. But when we look at color and we look at contrast and we're honest about what we're seeing and we really pay attention, the S95D is pulling off not just more color, darker, richer shade of color with better separation between darker to lighter colors, i.e. contrast. So it's the better image. I mean, it's very clear by this example. I don't know what YouTube's going to show you, what the camera's going to show you, but with my naked eye, looking at it, just looking at it, it's very obvious that I see more of all the in-between dark colors mixing in with the light colors, mixing in. I see the mixing, and I don't really see that. It's just really bright. And it's not as enjoyable when it's that bright. It's enjoyable on certain scenes, like if you have a black background and you have a fish, or you have an ink splatter. But that's why demo content providers also use this kind of stuff, because it can give that shock and awe, like, wow, that's impressive. Oh, I've got to buy this. And that's why they've been doing it for fucking, what? We're going on damn near a decade. They've been using these techniques to sell you on these TVs versus real content. I would like them to go back to the days of using like actual movie footage and movie reels and showing you what it actually looks like comparatively next to something, because then I think you'd see a lot more of the kind of stuff I'm talking about with the varied scenes and geometry and content pieces and particle effects and all that stuff, that you'd understand what we're dealing with here. It's warmer on the F to the right over here, but I think that's just a general thing for HDR. It is capable of getting warmer. So that's actually really nice, but it doesn't always help either. Regardless of which one you select though, I do think they are good TVs. I think the F needs to come down in price though. I think with the S95D existing, it just doesn't make sense to run out and buy the F. It seems stupid to me, if I'm being very honest with you. Ew, that looks like shit. What the fuck happened there? I don't know what the fuck, what was that disconnect there? The image just got all blue on the F out of nowhere. Like, what the fuck? All right, now we're back in HDR. Okay, I don't know what the fuck. I guess it snapped out of HDR. Whatever. Point being is that you can see more contrast on the S95D. Pause, showing you that right here. I mean, everything on the F is brighter but flat. And if you like flat imagery and you're like, I don't like all that contrast, then I don't know what you're doing buying a UHD TV in 2025, because look at this building. Look at how it turns. Pause. I mean, you're looking at details and they tell you. Everything will tell you. And YouTubers are dishonest, unfortunately, in this space, because there's a lot of money on the line. There just is. You can make good amounts of money in this job, and they rather make the money by making you feel good than telling you the truth. And the truth is simply put, there are occasions where the S95F will pull ahead of the S95D, but it's not on enough occasions to justify the price range or difference. And more so and more often, you're going to be more impressed with the S95D, especially when we talk about the SDR examples that we were talking about at the beginning of the video, which means in essence that you're just essentially paying for something just for the sake of buying a newer product. Because if you can get something better like the older product and get like a little bit better, then why wouldn't you do that? Now, it's not all the time. As I mentioned, it's warmer. So because HDR is warmer, things like now, like the yellow in the planet here is going to look better on the F. It's just going to be that way. I mean, there are too many back and forth moments though to justify this. And I'll go to the nebula here to show you what I'm talking about, just so we can kind of speed this up a bit. Again, looking at both have beautiful color, but now the S95F is pulling ahead. So this is where Samsung, I personally feel, is a little bit manipulative, because they'll wait till you get to something like a star field, and then they'll try to show you like all this contrast that just does not exist when it's outside of a star field. But if you're really keen on your eye and you pay attention, you can see details like the extra part of the nebula here a lot better than you can over there, and you can also make out a little bit more and just everything on the S95D. Just a little bit better, because now Samsung's algorithm is trying to overdo the contrast to really make you go wow and razzle dazzle you. But if you look at the S95D, it still provides you a spectacular image that makes you go wow, and it's truly on par with the S95F and pretty much every way outside of like brightness output. And when that's the case, I mean, you have your answer. The answer is the answer, or the question is the answer, kind of, right? And we're seeing it here. I mean, I look at the star fields and everything, and it's sharper on the S95F. So if you're watching a lot of star field stuff, I guess go for the F, but overall, save your money. It's not a value TV at all. You get the better image quality. You get pretty much everything you could want out of the S95D, and I would honestly just do that personally. That's about as real as anyone's going to tell you. I mean, we could go down to another example, but honestly, guys, I don't really think you need to. I think it really does speak for itself, okay? Some things are just a postulate, and the screens went black right now because we're waiting for it to load this demo, okay? I think some things truly do speak for themselves. I mean, for me, for this comparison, for SDR, slam dunk domination, S95D if you mostly watch SDR. If you're an HDR watcher, for the brightness, you might want to go with the Samsung S95F if you only care about brightness, but the flatness doesn't bother you. If you want good HDR, but you want contrast on top of that, well, then you're going to have to make some different decisions. And I kind of showed you what some of those decisions are. And that's going to be the S95D or S90D, because those two TVs right now are just the ones that are doing the most to provide the most contrast right now. I really hate, by the way, when I get these long ass commercials on fucking YouTube. I'm like, come on, YouTube, hurry up. Don't really want to say you're watching the commercial. But there's also this weird thing that's happening, as you clearly see, where like HDR randomly will snap off during a YouTube video, and it's not doing that on the S90D. So maybe that's something that might actually bug you, seeing that transition. So just keep that in mind. The brightness, though, is great on both. I am leaning towards the S95D, though. I love contrast with the mix of brightness and color, and it's giving me what I would call balance, right? Equilibrium. You don't have that on the F. Pause right here and show you that, okay? And if we look at this example, it's very clear. I mean, I don't think I should have to explain how hazy it starts to look. And this haze is real, and it can be felt in everything. Look at your building here. Look at your building here. Look at your building right over there. This is indicative of a lack of contrast as it gets. So yes, there are impressive moments on the S95F, but ultimately that's all they are. They're moments. Where consistently the S95D is just impressive, and there are no two ways about that. And hopefully by showing this off and telling you this, you're able to see it for yourself and pick it out for yourself. I mean, pause right here. That is a tremendous amount of contrast lost in my personal view. I mean, it's a fact that it's a contrast loss. If you look and you see, that isn't as visible as that because there's not as much contrast happening. Then again, contrast helps render things more three-dimensionally. It's just one of those things that we kind of learn the more we start doing these comparisons and things like that. But hopefully by showing this off and showing you, this helps you guys see exactly what's going on. And as always, I want to thank you guys so much for watching the #1 brand in honesty. The winner of this comparison for both SDR and HDR is going to be the S95D. But if you like brightness and you don't care about contrast and you're okay with spending a bit more money for a bit more brightness, not a whole lot, just like a little bit more brightness by maybe, like I would say on average, maybe 800 nits more brightness, then yeah, I go for the Samsung S95F. Otherwise, it's a total common sense, no-brainer move to buy the S95D over the F. As always, I want to thank you guys, though, for watching the #1 brand in honesty yet again, and until the next video, I'll see you guys later.